Hello everybody, I'm Johnny Mackey. Today I'll be talking about open source software, its advantages and disadvantages. What is open source software? Open source software is software that can be freely distributed, and the source code is included to make it. Anybody can modify the source code, and modified versions can be redistributed freely through file shares or given to a person on a disk. Some examples of good open source software are Mozilla and Google Chrome, which are web browsers use. GIMP, which is like Adobe Photoshop, and it's free. Ubuntu, which is an operating system like Windows or Mac or Mountain Lion, and also Apache, which is an open source web server, and Servlet container developed by Apache Software Foundation, and it can be used in Java and HTML programming classes. Most of those examples that I just spoke of can be used, and they're used in schools. Blogs are another great open source software. You usually can find these on the internet: blogger.com, wordpress.com, and tumblr.com. They're great places to make your own blogs, and you can come up with your own topics to talk about it. Now for the disadvantages and the advantages. I'll be talking about the cost as one of the advantages. Freedom, you can try before you buy it, and some other topics on the advantages sides. And some of the disadvantages will be money loss, and other topics will be discussed. The cost is that it's cheap between the prices of actually purchasing your own software and the virus protection, support charges, ongoing upgrade expenses, and the costs associated with being locked in to your own proprietary software. It takes more out of your business, and it's a better quality for the fraction of the price. Another topic is the freedom. When businesses use open source software, they don't have to be locked down and keep upgrading with certain prices. Some of the vendors, they don't have to be at their mercy. With others, open source software is at their own disposal. Open source software is great because you can try it before you buy it. When you try it before you buy it, usually you can try it out, and if you don't like it, you throw it away. It's free. Usually you can get it through live CDs, USBs, and many Linksys distributors, for example. No commitment is required for sure. Flexibility is another thing for open source software. Microsoft Windows and Office. You don't have to, those are some of the softwares that most businesses use. You're constantly on the treadmill trying to upgrade and on your software, and some people don't like that. Customizable. It's very customizable. Open source software is. Since the code is open, you can simply modify it without having to try with proprietary software. Linux on the Mac is a great example. The quality of open source software is great. At least one study has shown, in fact, that the technical superiority is typically the personal reason enterprises choose open source software. That's one of the great things about it. And now for the cons. Some of the cons are most developers lose control. There's a learning curve. The cost of actually running the software, and people actually spending money to get it to work. Developers lose control of their own software, and others can fork your code over and create a competing product. Because the code is open, there's flaws in it, and it's visible to the entire world. Developers lose money because users don't want to pay for the upgrades, and the users aren't able to control their own product. When they lose control of their product, they lose the money, and nobody likes to lose money. I know I don't. there's a big learning curve. You may need to hire an expert in your open source product to get your IT staff up to speed. Unlike with commercial products, there's no one in the open source community is obligated to help themselves, and many of them uh, find themselves asking their own questions of how do I get this to work. It's harder to make money in open source software. Making money is harder because it would be nice to be able to write your own cool programs and then get paid for it. But even at the end of the day, when we write this stuff, in every other profession, you can get paid for your efforts. The documentation is a really big problem because there's really no documentation on how to do your own open source software. There's no style guide for it or anything like that. And some people get really disappointed or down of how to actually make their own product. So what I say is open source runs on many pieces of hardware that make the web. I say it's possible for some developers that should consider becoming involved in open source projects to improve their skills and gain experience. Users should try more popular projects like Firefox and OpenOffice. Those are really great programs to use. I use some of those myself. Everybody, thank you for listening. I'm Johnny Mackey, and good night.